Hey guys, welcome to episode 2 of The Story Behind the Photograph. In this episode, we're going to be talking about one of my absolute favorite ideas that I've come up with, and it's still going strong for me to this day. And that is, you guessed it, Dancing with the Stars. So I want to go back to the original Dancing with the Stars shoot, the idea that I had. This was back in 2013, again, the first year that I started. I wanted to come up with a concept that would kind of set me apart from others that I'd seen photograph. It's something that would, somebody see that and go, "That was Casey Grimley that did that. That I know that guy." So to kind of give you a backstory of this whole idea, it really all started when I was out photographing the Milky Way by myself, as I often do, out in the middle of the Great Salt Lake. I drove out on this railroad service road, and I was out in the middle of the Great Salt Lake, and I was photographing the Milky Way, and I thought, I'm gonna get some pictures of me in my car. So I got some pictures of me in my car, and I brought my flash along. Remember that cheap flash that I had? Yeah, I brought that along. And I remember reading in one of those articles that I'd learned on digital photography school. Again, this is not sponsored by anybody, especially not digital photography school, but I have to give credit where credit is due. And anyways, I remember reading somewhere that if you fire a flash in your photograph, that in a longer exposure, the image, whatever that light hits, the sensor on your camera will record that information, and then if you do a long exposure, it will also record any other light or long exposure things. And so I thought, okay, let's try this out. As this was 3-4 o'clock in the morning when I was kind of putting this together, and I thought, okay, I will pop the flash. And I actually, come to think of it, I don't think I had the flash. I think I just used the pop-up flash on my camera because I forgot the other flash or something. So I fired the flash at the beginning of the exposure, took a 10 or 15, 20 second exposure, whatever, and it was me standing by my car. And I go and look at the photograph, and I stood there for a second, let the light hit me, stood there for another 3 or 4 seconds, and then I walked out of the frame, and went back to look at the photo. And it turned out, and I thought, okay, so if that works, where I can just stand there for a second or two after the flash fires, then how can I apply this to something to where that becomes my niche, or my market is night photography, Milky Way photography with portraits or something like that. And so I thought, oh, this is great. I just had this flood of ideas. I thought I could do family pictures. My brother just got a really cool Jeep. I was like, dude, we can go get some cool Jeep photos under the Milky Way. And just this flood of ideas came to me. And so that was over the weekend, I think in early May, I want to say, maybe late April 2013. And then I don't remember if it was before or after this happened, but I did a photo meetup with a bunch of photographers and a bunch of ballet dancers. And they were ballet dancers from the University of Utah. It was a big group photo shoot, and it was out on Antelope Island, and I had a fun time. I really enjoyed photographing dancers, and I still do to this day. They're some of my most favorite shoots I've ever done is photographing dancers. They were just amazing. And anyway, so I felt like I had a good rapport with a couple of these dancers, and I want to say it was the next day at work or something. I was or the next week at work after I shot these Milky Way photos. So I think the dancers came before, and then the Milky Way was like the weekend after. And I was at work, and I was like, okay, how can I implement these? And I could do family pictures. Okay, that's, how many people are going to be up for dragging their kids out at 10:30, 11, 12, 1 o'clock at night to take these pictures? And then I thought, that was really fun with the dancers. What if I shoot dancers under the stars? And so the bright idea was there you go, dancing, under the stars. And so I actually took 2 photos that I had done, one of the Milky Way, and then one of the dancers, and I made a silhouette. I photoshopped it together real quick just to get a concept, and I'll show you that if you're watching this. I'll show you that photo now. If you're listening, just kind of imagine a silhouette of a dancer and a ballet dancer and in the Milky Way behind. And so I sent this quickly photoshopped image to the dancer, actually who it was, and I think a couple of them, and said, hey, I've got this crazy idea and I think it's going to be great. Are you guys interested? And yeah, and a couple of them said, yeah, we're definitely interested. We'll absolutely do it. And this is when, and so I kind of told them, I said, well, because the Milky Way and the moon and things like that, this is the weekends we can do it. And it worked out for a couple of them. And so we made the plan to go out to the salt flats, or out near the salt flats, to go try this concept out. And I was really nervous because I'd never done this with other people. We were driving like an hour and a half from Salt Lake out to go shoot this. And, we got out there, and I had one flash, I had one, an umbrella, and I tried my hand at doing these Dancing with the Stars. And all of this first set was all single photos, so they would either hold the pose for as long as I could. And I told them, I said, if you start to move, hurry and run out of frame. It's fine. It's once that light flashes and hits you, that's recorded. But I found in some tests in the first couple photos, if they just hurry and ran out of frame after they did that, then stars or light on the horizon, whatever it was, would end up showing through their body. And so it was like, okay, well, if you could stand there for a couple of seconds afterwards and hold your pose as long as you can. If you start to move, or if I see a move, I'll say run off, and you have to run off. And we had this kind of running joke that was like, you have to run off and giggle. And so it was kind of funny because these ballet dancers would do their pose and then they'd run off and laugh. And anyways, so after doing a couple, a bunch of static shots, and they were just trying to hold these poses and things like that, I said, you know what, let's try doing some jump shots. And so we did some jump shots. And for those, I think I slowed the shutter speed, or sped up the shutter speed, so I wasn't shooting a full 15 or 20 seconds. I was shooting 8 or 10 or something like that. So the Milky Way wasn't coming in quite as bright, but it worked. The flash froze them enough to where it worked. And so it was this great idea that I had, and it all started coming together. And so from these early on photos, from this set here, I learned a lot. I learned that it worked, for one, and then also the response that I got from a lot of the dancers was, this is such a cool idea. How did you come up with this? And it kind of snowballed a little bit to, I had a circle of dance friends that were like, oh, hey, that would be so much fun. I'd love to go do that. And so that first year, I think I did one other Dancing with the Stars shoot. But then I think the next year I maybe did one or two, or I didn't do any. And then it took a couple of years to really get going and finding a more of a niche, because I found that I didn't know a lot of ballet dancers, and so my network wasn't really there. But I found a pretty good network of aerialist and pole dancers, and so that's kind of where I really kind of hit the market with those types of dancers. And it's really a lot of fun because they're on these aerial apparatuses, aerial silks and hoops and things like that. And so it's kind of, they're up in the sky. So it's really like you're dancing with the stars. And so that's kind of where that whole concept came from. But it all came back to this original idea that I had out at 3-4 o'clock in the morning, middle of nowhere by myself, to shoot portraits with people under the stars. And then just this first shoot really just kind of put it all together, and it's kind of snowballed from there. So if you follow me on Instagram or even on Facebook, if you see these photos, you go, yep, that's those are Casey those are Casey's photos. I know that that's what he does. So, and I appreciate everybody that follows me on Instagram and Facebook and that. So, that's the story of how I got started doing Dancing with the Stars and the story behind this photograph here. So I just want to say thanks for listening, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Until next time, bye.